15.1 Introduction. Serial killings are also called a serial murder. It is a homicide of two or more persons, victims, by the same killer. It can occur at the same time or it can occur at different times. It is not in any way like mass murder where a large number of people are killed in a mall, shopping center, or in some crowded place like a hotel, where people are relaxing and so on. It is different from this type of mass murder. It is the killer who decided to take the life of one or two more people using torturous methods and causing considerable agony to the victim. As one looks at such killing, it is seen that even around Roman Empire time, there were serial killings, followed later on by such murders in the medieval England, Germany, Italy, Hungary etc. countries. Even in Asia and other parts of the world there has been similarly long history, but there is no evidence-based documents available and hence such historical accounts become somewhat questionable. Only around the early 19th century, such serial killings came to be publicized because of stricter law enforcement and increased new coverage of these crimes. However, in the 20th century the serial murders were much more widely publicized and these serial killers were even known by their nicknames such as Boston Strangler, Dusseldorf Vampire and so on. Much later, there was a high coverage of such killings as for example the murders carried out by Ted Bundy, who killed more than 25 girls and women for nearly 4 years without getting detected. 1974–78, as students of forensic psychology, this is yet another topic that we need to appraise ourselves with. And in the present unit, we will discuss the dynamics of serial killing, explain psychopathology of serial killings and describe the role of a forensic psychologist in the context of serial killing. 15.2 Dynamics of serial killing. In the present section, we will define serial killings and also focus on its classification. We will also discuss about the psychology of serial killings. 15.2.1 Definition of serial killings. There is no exact definition of serial killing even in the legal terminology. However, Robert Ressler, who was heading the behavioral unit of the USA's FBI, defined it as involving at least 4 events that take place at different times at different places, especially after a break of some duration of time, weeks or months, before the next assault or murder, having typically the same modus operandi. Though no consensus exists regarding the definition of the serial killings, there is a definition given by the U.S. Department of Justice, which seems more acceptable and is used for regular judicial and other functioning. Jenkins and Jenkins stated that serial murder involves at least 2 different murders that occur over a period of time, ranging from hours to years. Serial killer is typically a person who murders 3 or more persons due to abnormal psychological gratification. These murders taking place over more than a month and including a significant period of time between one murder and the other. Another definition states that serial killings are unlawful homicide of at least 2 persons which is carried out by the same individual though in separate events and also at different times. There are 2 types of serial killing. One is the classic serial murder and the other is spree serial killing, which is motivated by thrill seeking. In the former, that is, classic serial murder, the individual concerned stalks the victim for quite some time, before assaulting and murdering. Usually this is also sexually motivated. 15.2.2 Classification of serial killings. There are 3 distinct types of serial killers, viz., the medical killer, the organized killer and the disorganized killer. The medical killer is very rare. However, this could be a person who is working in a hospital as a doctor who will not be suspected of any deliberate or intentional killing regarding any death that takes place. Hence doctors having this tendency kill quite a large number of patients until and unless someone suspects and goes after a thorough investigation, etc. These doctors are so very intelligent that they can conceal all the evidence and make it look a natural death of the person. The organized killer. The organized killer is one who is all the more difficult to apprehend. These killers are both well organized and also very intelligent, that they take care of every detail concerning the evidence that may have no evidence that would direct anyone, leave alone the police, to them. They plan the crime quite well in advance, taking into consideration every detail possible, and they are absolutely perfect in organizing the crime and then also carry it to perfection. They do not take any risks and plan their crime by first of all watching the victim, his /her movement and his /her very many behaviors, who all come to his /her house, whom he /she is with, and so on. Even the security doorknobs with its lock number and digitized program are studied by them intensely before they attack the person. Generally they do not kill the person where they live but may take them to some far-off place on some pretext and kill them in a different place, so that make sure the body of the victim is not found until they want it to be found. These psychopaths are very proud of their job well done with such meticulous care. The disorganized killers. As against organized killers, there are disorganized killers. In this case, there is no planning of the crime in the first place. The whole episode may take place at all odd time and odd days. Many times it may be on wrong time also, that they may get apprehended. They also try their best to close their track and all evidences, but being disorganized, have more chances of leaving some evidence that gives the clue to the law enforcement, who may end up capturing them. It is said that these disorganized killers have low intelligence quotient, IQ, and are also antisocial. No family, no friends, and they don't stay for too long in any one place. Interestingly, they tend to forget their heinous act and appear to have had auditory hallucinations that command them to murder someone. This explanation they offer in most cases. In addition to the above three categories of serial killers, there are also serial killers who are categorized based on their motives. Under this we have A. Hedonistic serial killers, B. Mission-oriented serial killers, C. Visionary serial killers, and D. Power and control serial killers. Taking the first one, the hedonistic serial killers, as mentioned earlier, they are thrill seekers. They get pleasure from killing. They get excitement and thrill in torturing the victim, mutilating them, and they just do not even care whether the victim is even dead or alive. Because of the excitement they get, which gives them enormous pleasure, these killers go for such killing just to get that pleasure, and thus their killings may be more frequent and with lesser gaps between one murder and the other. They also indulge in necrophilia, sexual act involving corpses. For them the very act of mutilating and dismembering the body excites them and thrills them. These are all thus called thrill killers. The next in this category is the mission-oriented serial killers. These persons believe that they are destined by the God to remove people who are undesirable for the society, as for instance, the prostitutes who they think are unclean and do undesirable activities. Similarly, they may go after persons who are indulging in drugs or those who are homosexuals. In all these cases, these serial killers believe that they are doing good to the society by getting rid of these bad people. These serial killers kill but do not hide their tracks or remove any evidences, and thus quite often apprehended by the police. The next category is the visionary serial killers, who generally have hallucinations, especially auditory hallucination, wherein the voices tell them to go and kill some people. They do not seem to suffer from any mental illness, but do hear voices commanding them to kill someone. They are also easily apprehended by the police. The next category of serial killers is the power and control serial killers. These are persons who like to have control over their victims. Having power over their victims gives them the thrill. Having been deprived of any power or any kind of opportunity to do things that they wanted, they had always felt helpless and being driven to do something which they never wanted to. Hence they find it exciting to have control over their victims who cry and beg them to leave them. This makes these persons feel very powerful. In fact, these killers, though not lust-filled or sexually assault victims, their hunger for power over the victim dominates every other desire and wish of theirs. Thus, they kill just to have power over someone, and here it is the victim. 15.2.3 Psychology of Serial Killer. Serial killers have been studied fairly in detail to ascertain the typical personality that they have and the psychological profile as well as their motivation to indulge in serial killing. Psychologists, neurologists, and sociologists have studied them with great interest, and based on their research, considerable information about the serial killer's behaviors have been elucidated. Biological factors. Let us start with biological factors contributing to serial killing behaviors. Experts are of the opinion that genetics does play an important role in serial killing behavior. In his book on Childhood Secrets of Serial Killers, Berardi and Morris clearly state that a serial killer is a person born to be so. Giving an example of a serial killer, viz., Fred West, the authors demonstrated that he was born to be a serial killer and that got augmented and he learned to kill by the environment in which he was brought about. Thus, the authors consider the serial killer as a born killer. Research in behavioral genetics indicates that the violent behaviors and propensity to violence are all associated with polymorphisms. These polymorphisms are used for detection, transportation and catabolism of the neurotransmitters, for example, serotonin, etc. that are manifest in dysfunctional families. This genetic evidence is very strong that in a certain case the judge reduced the jail sentence of a convict. These polymorphisms are particularly associated with impulsive and antisocial behavior. Biologically, the sensitivity and other inborn qualities to control impulse etc. are not present, and if such an individual is thrown into the environment which desensitizes him /her all the more, he/she gets prone to indulge in violence, and do not even understand or be aware that what he/she is doing is wrong. These persons are devoid of the concept of right and wrong. In an article, Do Serial Killers Have a Genetic Disposition? Berit Brigade stated that the majority of the most prolific and dangerous serial killers were genetically disposed to behave antisocially. At the same time, she also pointed out that apart from the inherited predisposition, when these people are brought up in an environment which disregards the lives of others, these persons too develop these traits and continue on indulging in violence. Thus, it is both genes and the environment which contributes to the serial killing behaviors. This of course is only for a very small percentage of people, while large number, most individuals do not develop any such behaviors which are antisocial in nature. Psychological factors. In this regard, it is important to understand that by and large people in the society do not ever even imagine committing a crime or murder people and indulge in heinous crime etc. It is only a very small percent of individuals who indulge in such heinous crimes. Due to interest in understanding the very important issue as to why these serial killers indulge in such crimes, and if there is any typical psychological or personality factors that contribute to such criminality. Considerable research studies have been done, and by and large the results of the studies indicate that the serial killers do not suffer from any mental illness or can be considered legally insane, but do lack empathy, understanding etc. and do not develop any respect for the lives of other human beings. The most consistent psychological feature amongst these serial killers appears to be antisocial behavior. Not only they lack empathy, but also do not show any respect for the law of the land or the many social behaviors based on the societal norms. They do not feel guilty or remorse and have a vengeful attitude towards the society and thus indulge in violent behaviors and heinous crimes. In regard to their being declared legally insane, they are basically diagnosed as psychopaths and antisocial personality disorder persons, who do not learn from their mistakes, but repeat the same violent and murderous behaviors even if punished for the same. As for their intelligence quotient, IQ, it has been found to be slightly lower than average, though the range is from 54 to 186 IQ. By and large they are supposed to have average normal social intelligence. Some of the important psychological traits of serial killers are antisocial behavior, asserting power, torturing animals, manipulation and predatory behavior. Research evidence shows that these serial killers develop deviant sexual fantasies like raping and humiliating women. These fantasies are tested and tried by them even on dolls and objects and thus cater to their fantasies. It has been hypothesized that these persons indulge in these fantasy activities which help them overcome or reduce the mental agony and pain they have suffered by having been abused physically, sexually and psychologically in their childhood when they were totally helpless. Neurological factors. According to research in this area, it has been observed that these serial killers have such neural networks which encode deviant sexual fantasies, and these neural networks also follow a unique pattern of activation. They are observed to suffer from pathological neural watermark, PNW, suggesting thereby that once the fantasy has been enacted by the person, it becomes a part of the autobiographical memory. Once so, it will require specific patterns of activation, on exposure to similar items. On such exposure to similar items, these elicit certain emotional response, encoded B by PNW, which activates these fantasies causing sexual arousal observed in the neural activity in the related areas of the brain. Hence during interview, the police or other personnel use the toys and dolls that can stimulate these neural systems and thus elicit the fantasy in the suspect revealing his deviant behaviors. Another finding has been that PNW code components show high level of aggression associated with fantasy. These aggressive activities occur in the lateral hypothalamus, prefrontal regions and in amygdala. In a relatively more recent study using brain imaging, it was found that criminal psychopaths had decreased connectivity between a brain region that processes negative stimuli and those that give rise to fearful reactions. They appear to suffer from lack of experiencing or feeling the hurt and pain another human will experience if such a heinous crime is committed, is one of the deficit factors in these cases. A possible explanation found for this deficit in a recent brain imaging study was the prefrontal cortex, which interprets responses from the amygdala, had poor connectivity between the regions. Thus, processing negative stimuli was diversely affected and thus they end up with an inability to feel negative emotions. This is why the psychopath does not feel guilty or remorse when the other person whom he/she has harmed suffers from pain. Social factors. While biological, neurological and psychological factors do play an important role in contributing to serial killing behaviors in some individuals, it is equally important and relevant to consider several factors including the feeling of control and empowerment the person feels during the act. The childhood of these serial killers has been such that the abuse and neglect faced by them make them feel like misfits and powerless people in the society. They feel both socially and sexually inadequate. As stated by Ted Bundy, a serial killer, the act of rape gives them power over life and death. That is a feeling of control which they had lost in face of society. Thus, to conclude the factors that are associated with serial killing behaviors, one may state that biological, psychological, social and neurological factors play a significant role in contributing to these behaviors. More specifically, the environmental factors decide the behavior more or less clearly given the predisposition towards violence, aggression etc. 15.3 Psychopathology of serial killings. Psychopathology can be explained as an empirical study of mental disorders. Thus, when we discuss about psychopathology of serial killings, we are mainly focusing on what are the mental disorders that could lead to an individual becoming a serial killer. Psychological testing done by forensic psychologists show that the factors such as psychopathy, anti-authority attitude and high-risk-taking behaviors are obtained in the MMPI test administered to the serial killers. In some research, forensic psychologists have reported a higher prevalence of autism spectrum disorders and childhood head injuries among serial offenders. As mentioned earlier, the serial killers fantasize a great deal, which serves as the blueprint for their violent behavior. Also, it has been found by forensic psychologists that sexual serial killers appear to rehearse their paraphilic elements of fantasy on their own selves and thus prepare to inflict similar behaviors on their victims. On the other hand, when we consider mass murder, it is seen that the characteristics differ and the primary motives in these cases have been observed to be revenge, power, loyalty, terror or profit. In a study of mass murders in the United States of America, data taken between years 1966 to 2017, 51 years, showed the following about the mass murderers as against the serial killers. 1. They were motivated by ideological thinking and beliefs. 2. They were the most patient and methodical in their criminality. 3. In the process they were also the most lethal. 4. They also show signs of trauma, paranoid thinking and psychopathy. 5. They have and keep in their mind feelings of resentment which are exacerbated by fantasy of dominant theme of revenge etc. Forensic psychologists have also demonstrated certain important sociological and demographic features as well associated with serial killing and mass murder cases. Some of the factors identified by the psychologists include being conservative, having faced rejection by their social groups, working in lower or lower middle class etc. On personal aspects, they feel inadequate about their masculinity, experienced more failures than success, crave to display personal power through violence against the society in which they feel rejected. In one of the studies, it was found that across hundreds of serial killings, 4 major factors emerged as to why they killed, and these included the following: 1. Committing murder as a form of celebration. 2. Committing murder as a type of game. 3. Killing for fun and enjoyment. 4. Killing for intense thrills and sensations. There are also various theories that explain serial killing. These are briefly discussed as follows. The routine activity theory explains serial killings occurs based on everyday social and structural features, which all influence give opportunities to offenders to act. The flow theory explains serial crimes as due to frustration that is felt by offenders with their first murders. Because of their narcissism, they tend to take more risks over time. According to flow theory, the challenge to successfully killing far exceeds the offender's skill in committing murders. As their skills improve with experience, they increase the number of murders and thereby get psychological satisfaction. Another theoretical explanation given for serial crime is the serious leisure perspective, SLP. According to this theory, diverse leisure activities can be classified along a continuum from casual leisure to serious leisure activities. Casual leisure gives relaxation and stress reduction to the persons concerned. On the other hand, serious leisure activities require considerable skill, planning, effort and perseverance. This gets the person awards which are of long-standing duration, and many continue on these as a career. However, It has been noted from research that SLP application helps to understand the serial murderer's approach, the manner in which he/she plans, and them commit the crimes, getting in the process benefits of the leisure at the extreme level. Thus, forensic psychology draws from social and behavioral science disciplines to understand how factors such as social and behavioral factors contribute to such heinous crimes. 15.3 Role of forensic psychologists in the context of serial killings. As mentioned in previous blocks and sections, forensic psychology deals with human behavior as related to legal and criminal issues. It focuses on civil as well as criminal cases and is a valuable tool to understand the complexity and processes of many abnormal and unlawful behaviors that are indulged in by humans, such as serial crimes, which has its contributing factors in the cultural and social milieu, in addition to the biological and neurological factors. Forensic psychologists play an important role in the context of serial killings. The forensic psychologist is also called as criminal profiler, and may work in tandem with law enforcement agencies. They generally develop a profile of the serial killers as they take detailed case history and understand in detail the background of the serial killers. They also take the help of many psychological theories to assist them in this function, as well as in applying the principles and techniques to the legal system. In quite a few cases, the forensic psychologists also work with the police officers and investigating personnel to find solution to the difficult problems of apprehending the right person who has been involved in serial crimes. They develop profiles of murderers, rapists and serial killers, including violent criminals, and work with the law enforcement agencies to develop a brief profile of the concerned serial killer, based on the many psychological traits they have elucidated during case history. They provide invaluable insight into the minds of serial killers and help hunt these killers. While the forensic psychologists offer insight into the minds of the serial killers, it is not that they carry out profiling of only serial killers. They do profiling of many other murderers and a profile even of arsonists and rapists. They work within the courts and help the court by determining if the concerned accused or the victim is competent enough to stand trial. Quite a few forensic psychologists are involved directly in research on the typical factors that lead some to become serial killers and others to indulge in many serious crimes that harm the individuals in the society. It is a field in which forensic psychologists can contribute a great deal in understanding the criminal mind and its working. Forensic psychologists are also involved in evaluating serial killers during court proceedings as an expert witness. They have to take a very detailed, elaborate interview, keep and maintain an exhaustive records of every incident and event that led to such behaviors, and to work on the profile of the serial killers. They also had to do considerable literature review. Forensic psychologists are also involved in evaluating serial killers and other capital murder cases to understand the mitigating circumstances, their mental status, particularly assessing them for legal insanity, and evaluating the killers for their competency to stand trial. Of the various challenges faced by forensic psychologists in dealing with hardened criminals and serial killers, etc., one is of obtaining collateral information for evaluation purposes. Not only facts are important, but the many psychological test instruments that forensic psychologists use are extremely important for their reliability and validity. There are many limitations in these testing instruments, and hence while interpreting scores etc., one has to be extremely cautious and should double-check every word that is written for its verifiability, evidence and trustworthiness. Thus, a successful forensic psychologist is one who is able to draw from multiple disciplines including all behavioral sciences, psychiatry, psychology and sociology to gain insight into the behavioral dynamics and features that contribute to serial crime and many other heinous crimes. Though it is true that serial crimes and mass murders etc. are rare occurrences, yet when happens causes untold misery and sufferings to the victims, spreading terrible fears across the society. As of today, though the typical causes that cause such heinous crimes such as the serial crimes are not known, it is clearly evident that such homicides are caused by multidimensional factors such as the behavioral, genetic, psychologic, neurobiologic, and sociological factors in combination. Further, the contribution from leisure science is an important dimension to consider in these serial killings. The leisure approach offers some idea to explore these heinous crimes. Having knowledge about these varied causative dimensions, places the law enforcement and the many others dealing with such crimes consider preventive efforts based on these causative factors. Thus, helping high-risk individuals to take up health-promoting activities, as well as satisfying leisure experiences, will perhaps help as one of the better preventive measures. 15.4 Let us sum up. In the present unit, we discussed about the dynamics of serial killings. Serial killer is typically a person who murders 3 or more persons due to abnormal psychological gratification, and serial killings are unlawful homicide of at least 2 persons which is carried out by the same individual though in separate events and also at different times. The unit focused on the classifications and psychology of serial killings as well. The unit also explained the psychopathology of serial killings. Psychopathology can be explained as an empirical study of mental disorders. Thus, when we discussed about psychopathology of serial killings, we mainly focused on what are the mental disorders that could lead to an individual becoming a serial killer. The unit also described in detail the role of a forensic psychologist in the context of serial killings.